talking with Matt Rosenthal today about his journey, and how he got started in entrepreneurship was a treat because he's a huge nerd just like me. He shared how originally he was going to start in the criminal justice space, but had some events happen in life that got him in the path of some key people, and he ended up falling into IT. That happens more than you might think. Later, he started up a side gig that his employer found out about and decided to fire himself and go full bore into the side business. Fast forward a few years and he's built it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. He's figured out the key to balancing life and really making yourself and information redundant. Two things that seem counterintuitive but really go a long way toward building a scalable business. There's a lot that fellow entrepreneurs can learn from this conversation. Find Matt online on LinkedIn, their website at mind-core.com, and on YouTube as well. Also, be watching for a new podcast starting up called Digging In, hosted by his company. Let's jump into the conversation now. I had somebody recently, they referred to it as Studio 150, and it caught me off guard. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I'm when I'm off work, right? And I'm like, I'm off work, and I'm like, what's he talking about? Oh, the truck. Yes, I'm still podcasting out of the back of my truck. So I might start up a side business doing that, man.
You're like, it's the new version of Studio 54.
Yep, exactly, and it's portable. So, well, excellent, man. So like I said, I'm really glad to get the chance to talk with people that are in the entrepreneurial space. And when I first started this up, I never had it. I
want to join you. I'm going to join you with my hat.
You got your hat. You got your Matt hat. There we go. But yeah, like I never thought that I would be in touch with so many cool people. So when I got the notice that, hey, Matt wants to be on the podcast, I'm like, yes, I get to talk with another cool guy. So so walk me through a little bit, like kind of get me familiar. What does your company do? Let's start there.
Yeah. So our company, the company begins with me, right? The brand kind of begins with me. I started it about 20 years ago, and it's evolved over the years. But what it is now is IT strategy and advisement services, right? It starts with that, and then based on what any business needs in terms of technology, once we figure out the strategy that matches their business goals, then we kind of offer up solutions. We say, go here for the cloud, go here for your phones, do this with your server, whatever the case may be, cybersecurity, and then we'll actually deliver the solution, right? So we'll solve problems. We solve problems. That's the basic thing that we do, but it's really an advisory service at the beginning to ensure that the problems that we're solving are the ones that actually are going to help propel their business forward. Okay. So it's a lot of fun because I get to meet a lot of people as well, man. And it's the business owners that are out there that really want to take their business to the next level. They understand technology is like critical to that. And so those people, when that connection happens, it's a really good relationship, with the clients, and we do really cool things for people.
Nice. That talking about how like the leadership, they understand, yeah, we need to leverage technology in some way, but they've probably got a bajillion other things on their mind. And so you need a trusted advisor that can come in and say, we see what the problem is. There's all these different challenges. Now, this group of seemingly disparate things that are going on, it's actually this challenge, and you can solve it in this way. Is that fairly accurate to what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, definitely. But again, it applies to the people that are open to that, because there's two sides to what we see out there. There's a lot of businesses and business owners that look at IT as an expense and nothing more than that, and they don't really value the reality that your business, no matter what your business is, service, product, doesn't matter, it's technology. You can't be in business without technology right now, and it's never going to change. I mean, so for the people that do understand that and value the technology and look at it as an investment, then what you're saying is true.
Yeah.
For the people that don't, it's unfortunate. They're never really going to reach their goals. Their goals are just dreams that are never going to be reached. So it makes them unattainable because they don't realize how important technology is to reaching their goals.
Mm-hmm. Very true. I've seen that happen in like the software testing space. So many QA teams are like, oh, it's a cost center, and they have to spend their time trying to defend themselves from getting fired. And it's like, guys, you've got like an amazing thing at your disposal here. And if you treat it like, oh, we're just spending money and we don't know what value we're getting, and they don't think of it as an investment, it's like, that's the song of my people, man. So I know, I understand.
Yeah.
I get it. I totally get it. Um, well, how did you decide to start your company up? Like, what was the like catalyst for that? You got a story?
I love that question. That's a great question. I love telling my story. So I have a degree in criminal justice,
Okay.
sociology. Never had an intention of being anything other than a cop. And that didn't work out so well. I had an injury when I was in my early 20s. I blew out my chest. I'm missing like half my chest bench pressing. So
Oh my
it's a
goodness.
whole other story. But when that happened, I had been going to college to get that degree. I had been on that trajectory. That was all I wanted to be. I never thought about, oh, wait, what if I can't be that? So that ended up happening because I couldn't, I couldn't pass the physical test at the time.
Right.
So I bounced around for a long time. And I ultimately, I think I was about 29 or so. I'm a volunteer firefighter. I'm not active anymore, but I was for like 15 years. One of the guys at the firehouse, he's like, oh, my brother works at Deutsche Bank in downtown Manhattan by the World Trade Center. And he's in IT, starting up a company, and he's going to do some consulting for Deutsche Bank. Do you want to, if you want, he's hiring some people that have no experience whatsoever. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm tired of bouncing around doing like every manual labor job that exists on the planet.
Yeah.
So let me try and like get into something here. And that was kind of how I fell into IT. So he gave me a job, and I think he's paid me 40 grand a year. This is back in the late 90s. I'm like, oh my God, I never made that much money before.
Yeah.
And I got paid to learn, to learn on the job. And I went from knowing nothing about computers, and I mean nothing, to continually educating myself, and really wanting to always know more than everybody else, because I didn't want to be that weak link on the team. I got really good at it. I really did. And over years and years and years and years working for different companies, just fast forward about 8 years or so, I ended up being the head of IT for a $2 billion PR firm, a holding company that owned PR, marketing, and advertising companies in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
I had about 35 people working for me throughout New York City. And at that time, when you're in IT, everybody needs somebody to, hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? So I had all these side hustles going on, mm-hmm. which back then wasn't like accepted. Like now we have like the side hustle culture, but back then it wasn't so accepted. And I had this is one of those like forks in the road that happen in life, and you which way do you go? My employer found out that I was doing this side work, and they didn't like it, and I think they were going to fire me, mm-hmm. even though there was no reason to, even though I was like their superstar. So I quit. I didn't want to have it on my record that I was getting fired from anything. Mm-hmm. I quit, and that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. And a few more years of bouncing around. I was a CFO for somebody for a while, but during that time, I kept getting more and more IT business, and it reached a point where I was doing so much IT work on the side that I was making 3 times as much as I was making at my full-time job. So I said, okay, time to stop. I had a wife. I had a young baby at that time. I said, I'm doing it. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to have my own business. And that was it. That's how it started. And never took out any debt, never owed anybody any money. I saved all that side business money over the years. And that was how I funded really being able to go and do my own thing. So I never had that struggle of like, how do you start up a business? I did it over time, very slowly. And here we are. I have a multi-million-dollar company that services some very large firms, and have a great team of people working for me, and we're just getting started.
Oh man, that is a really cool story, and I like how you decided early on. You're like, I need to diversify my portfolio here and not just have all my income coming from one stream. You got a side gig, and I love how you basically you fired yourself in order to do this, right? You're like, you're not going to fire me. I quit. It's like, yeah.
You want to hear something really fun? I'll tell you really quick. I don't know how much time we have, but when that happened, I had just ordered 15 computers for one of my clients who was in the city. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is back in the early 2000s or so. And they're still one of my biggest clients to this day because they grew to be this huge, huge company. So I had ordered 15 computers for them, and I didn't know where to have them shipped. So I had them shipped to my office. Mm-hmm. So they were in the server room in my office at my full-time job. Well, when I quit, I couldn't get back in the building, and I'm like, oh, geez, I got 15 computers still there. it took me 2 weeks to get those computers back because they didn't believe they were mine. The employer, my former employer, they thought they were theirs and they were like not giving me the computers.
Yeah.
They're mine. I funded that with my own money. I had to lay out the money. I'm a small business. I had nothing at the time. It was all my credit cards. So I had like 15 computers and monitors and servers all in the storage room that I couldn't get my hands on that I had paid for out of my pocket
Mm-hmm.
to sell to one of my customers. So it was, I have a million stories like that, you know?
Oh my goodness. But I mean that's what makes the fabric of entrepreneurship so interesting. It's like, when you're going through it at the time, it's like, oh my goodness, what the heck? But then when you get through to the other side, you look back like 20 years prior, it's like, dang man, this is like stories for the grandkids. You can sit around and just shoot the bull and be like, remember that time we almost lost like thousands of dollars worth of merchandise because they thought that we were absconding with their hardware. Haha, good times, man. You can laugh. You can laugh now, but back then, man, I bet you were sweating it.
I was scared, man. I was like, I didn't have any money. I was using my own credit cards. Like I had nothing at the time, you know?
Oh man. Oh man. Well, so as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, like what have been some of the major challenges that you've overcome? You can look back and say, man, that almost broke me and it didn't. What
Gosh,
was it?
you know what? There's so many,
Yeah.
which is also the key to being a successful, mature entrepreneur. There's endless amounts. Uh, One of the biggest lessons I learned was redundancy. I don't mean in technology, I mean in knowledge. I built my business early on and pivoted frequently, and I still pivot frequently. But when I moved to the cloud, not only moving my company, when I began to sell cloud services, it was early on, and there weren't a lot of people doing it. I had built my own cloud infrastructure in a data center. And there's a gentleman who works with me actually to this day. He had left and come back. One of the smartest guys I've ever met. He was able to build my vision. So I had the vision of building this cloud infrastructure when it was not the in style thing to do. He built it. I figured out how to sell it. And he was the only one. It was just me and him and one other guy. Well, he decided he wanted to get out of our gig, which was, in our business, you're working a lot. And there's really no clock in our business. He wanted to go work a 9 to 5, and he went and took a job in New York City. We left on best of terms, good friend. And I was like, oh my God, the guy who built this, who knows how to support it, he's gone. And I want to talk about sweating. I figured it out.
Yeah.
After I got through 1 or 2 days of like panic, which I learned that this is a long, long time ago. I learned along the way, like everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it that way. And in hindsight, I should have done a better job of having redundancy for him because he was like the key element to the whole thing running. And when he wasn't there, it was definitely a fearful moment. I don't have those types of problems anymore, but when you're starting out, and it's you and 1 or 2 other people, everybody's important. Everybody plays such an important role. And this guy was key to the operation. Mm-hmm. And I solved it. I replaced him. We moved on, but it was painful. Yeah. So start with the beginning. Start with the end in mind is always a good way to kind of look at things. Like if you're going to do something, make sure that somebody else, more than one person, knows how it works and can support it. And I think it's common among people in our business or my business in IT that when you start something up, you're really not thinking about, well, wait, what happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? So the second example of an answer would be risk management. When you're trying to get something going, you're selling as much as you can. You're trying to get customers, trying to build it. There's not a lot of time being set aside to manage risk.
Right.
And I happen to have a risk averse, even though I take a lot of risks, they're very calculated. Mm-hmm. So not a lot of people stop and say, okay, I need to take a risk here. What are the pros? What are the cons? And a piece of advice would be take the time to actually not think ahead. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to have such a risk that you could actually be shooting yourself in the foot.
Right.
So, going back to the first example I gave you, I did that with that gentleman. Now I was like all in, just going for it, trying to build something. Mm-hmm. I did know in the back of my mind that could happen, that he could leave, but I never thought it was going to happen. And that is something that was a huge lesson learned. People make their own decisions and you cannot control outcomes. So all you can do is manage risk, think ahead, plan, and be prepared for all the unknowns. And you got to identify as many unknowns as you possibly can, minimize that risk as much as you possibly can. It's a balancing act as an entrepreneur. It's a never ending balancing act.
Yep.
So
I hear that. I hear that. You know, and there's something to be said about I guess what we usually call it is tribal knowledge, right? Where, okay, there's
exactly.
one person in this entire company that knows how to do this. And if you're coming into a company new and you don't realize like, well, how do I do this aspect of my job? And you just have to know certain things. It's like, okay, there's not knowledge being shared. And there's some fear that needs to be overcome there too, because sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to share my knowledge. I'm the only person that knows how to do this. That's job security. It's like, no, it's not, because bro, if you get hit by a truck, this whole company is in trouble, including you. So please share the knowledge, right? That's a hard
Yeah.
to overcome. Yeah. You ever
To me, as a business owner, I look at jobs.
Whoops, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say,
As a business owner, I look at job security. There's a delay. I'm going to pause 3 seconds because one of us has a delay.
Okay. So I was going to say, have you ever run into that situation where you're coming into a client and it's like, okay, well, we don't really want to share knowledge with each other, and like, what do you do about that?
Happens less and less, but it happens. It used to happen frequently. That actually goes back to that initial advisory conversation. So if we're partnering up, if we're going to work together, then sharing of information, sharing of knowledge is central to teamwork and to collaboration and to us being able to help you. So that kind of gets weeded out in the very, very beginning of the relationship, because if I can't get past that, then I would probably pass on the relationship, and it's just not going to be a successful relationship. If we do come across that, because we have clients that we work with who do have internal IT, and usually it will be their internal IT, like an IT director who's hiring us. So there's not so much of that competition and the withholding of information, but it happens. And so we take an empathetic and compassionate approach and try to bring it to a place where, look, we're all on the same team. We're trying to help you. We're here to help you. We're not here to take your job or to challenge you or anything like that. I mean, we're solely here to help you and to help your company. So, we really do need to work together. Usually when you appeal emotionally to somebody in that way, it moves the ball, down the field, and it opens them up. I've had a very seldom, and I have had the occasion where it just is not possible. And it ends up being uncomfortable for sure. It really does, but it's so uncommon. It really is.
Yeah. I'm glad it's uncommon.
For us.
Yeah. I've seen it happen a whole lot of times, and it's like, oh, guys, like, making my face hurt. This is not a sustainable way to work, but I'm glad you're finding the right people, man. That's exciting. I probably need to learn some things from you about that, because sometimes we find places that are just like busted, and it's like, oh my goodness, like they need like psychological help, So
can I give you an analogy? So I years ago, I got involved in buying multifamily houses just as investments. And I've always made the choice. It's the same thing as what we're talking about. I've always made the choice. It's not an easy choice, but to not accept a tenant and to hold out, even if I had to pay that mortgage out of my pocket for an extra month or two. I would rather do the due diligence and make sure that we understand each other, and that the tenant is really somebody that's going to take good care of the property, and that in on my part too. If there's a broken window or something's broken, I fix it right away. There's a mutual understanding that we're going to work a certain way together. It's the same thing. So I'm not going to make the choice to work with somebody if we don't have a mutual belief system and we're not in alignment about what it means to work together. Like we're trying to solve problems together. There's nothing adversarial. There's no egos involved. There's just not. I say to people in my company before a lot of our meetings, check your ego at the door, because this is going to get real. Mm-hmm. And, and that's kind of, but we do it from a place of compassion and warmth and understanding, but we're going to get real,
Yep. I do understand that. And, so often that we have to approach it like, yeah, we're dealing with humans, but as humans, we have the choice. We can decide how we're gonna respond to what might be some hard information. And it's not personal. It's not, hey, we're trying to beat you over the head. We're trying to beat you up or anything, but we want to see you be successful. And it sounds like you're applying that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it took a long time. That didn't just happen. I mean, it's like years of coaching, of me being coached and me learning from other people and seeing what not to do by people. Like I pay close attention to people around me, other
yeah,
business owners. I have a lot of friends, excuse me, that are entrepreneurs. I mean, and when I say entrepreneur, I don't mean somebody who tried to do something and failed. And then, I mean entrepreneurs, people who have been successful at building businesses. I look at what they do wrong too.
mhm,
And I focus, I think, more on what they do wrong than what they do right, because that's how I avoid making mistakes.
mhm. Yeah,
I make other mistakes, but I try to avoid the ones that I could avoid.
right. Well, years ago, I heard a saying. It's like you don't live long enough to make all the mistakes. You have to learn from the mistakes of others. Uh, we don't have time to make all the
Sure.
mistakes ourselves, right? So it's best to learn from other people. That's why I hang around people that fail a lot, and it seems to help me. It's like, don't be that guy. So,
I love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what do you wish that someone had told you about entrepreneurship 5 years ago?
You have to go back farther because I've been in it for
Okay,
too long.
okay,
Um,
15 years ago.
oh, okay. 15 years ago, I was certainly much younger, had none of the experience that I have now as an entrepreneur. And I thought I knew everything. And I really did think I knew everything. Like so many IT guys out there, we think we know everything. And I think one of the things that, first of all, I wish I had more mentors up front that had um, given me advice. But one of the most important things I wish somebody told me was your family comes before your business.
Mhm.
So, and for me, I was like on a 10-year tear of trying to build something. And so I focused most of my energy and most of my time on that. And that does down the road have an impact on your relationships. So I wish somebody had told me earlier. I did have people tell me later on, but I wish some people told me earlier on, don't be so driven and goal oriented to the degree where you aren't paying enough attention to other things that matter,
Mhm.
because those other things will be impacted. Where you put your focus is where you have an impact. And I was not putting enough focus on my personal life, on my marriage, on my children. Well, at that time it was my marriage and then my children. So I'm thankful and I'm grateful that I learned that lesson before I actually had too much of a problem in my personal life,
Mhm.
which I know a lot of entrepreneurs, honestly, who've gotten divorced, who've got bad situations because they did not learn that lesson, and they're just all in business, 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 and it's not a good way to live your life.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. I've almost fallen into that trap just with corporate work, working like 60 hours a week. And it's like, all right, you're not spending enough time raising your family. And we've got 4 little girls now. And
Oh wow,
yeah, that's why
that's
I do these
awesome.
in the truck. They're noisy. Um, but looking back, it's like, I wish I had heard the same thing. And I guess we kind of think, okay, if I'm not pushing hard enough, if I'm not doing enough things, if I'm not, am I businessing properly? If I'm not like giving it everything, it's like you're businessing wrong if you're giving it everything to that degree. You gotta reserve some for a legacy. You're building a family, you're building a marriage, and that's a vastly more important thing. A business is just kind of,
Monumentally, if that's the right word, exponentially more important.
yes, it is. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Well,
Those
I've
people's lives that we have an impact on. You have 4 girls. They're certainly, I'm sure, young because you're a young guy,
yeah.
and I have two young girls. And so you and I have something in common, is that we're men. So that as a man with daughters, those daughters will live out their adult lives and look at and experience men based on the example that we set for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so our presence and being there in a positive way and teaching them these very important life lessons that aren't necessarily things that come from saying words. They come from just being present and from experiencing our healthy energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's hopefully down the road what they end up seeing as their role model. That is and living their life and passing that on through generations, far more important than us. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I do. That's one big reason why I take them on daddy-daughter dates pretty frequently, and I make sure like, hey, I'm supposed to be the example. They don't need to marry somebody that's like just like me, but they need to have a man in their life that treats them the right way. And it should be
That's
their
right.
dad. Dang it.
That's right.
So
That's right. We set the
awesome.
example. That's
We
good
do.
stuff.
We do. It's on us, man. We got broad shoulders. That's why we're dudes. Well, I guess I got one last question. And
Sure.
do you have any sage advice for people if maybe they're just starting out, or maybe they're like 20 years on their entrepreneurial journey? Like, what could you impart to people?
That's a whole other show, and I want to do that with you. I'm going to give you one, though, but there's like an hour's worth of those things. One of the most important things, if you're talking specifically to entrepreneurs, is, and I don't, this could be a learned skill. You need to see what other people don't see.
Right.
That is also called opportunity. It is also called the challenges, the problems. You have to see what other people don't see. You can't be just seeing this. You can't just be seeing this. You got to see everything. And when you do that, you'll recognize when it's time to pivot. And don't be afraid to pivot, because your decision might have made sense last week or 6 months ago, but it might be time to make a new decision. And if you don't make that decision quick enough, so you don't pivot quick enough, you could have a problem in your business.
Right.
So get your ego out of the way. Listen to people around you. Get people's advice. Yes, at the end of the day, you have the final decisions, but get good, solid advice from smart people. Look for the feedback. Make good decisions. Pivot quickly, and start by seeing what other people don't see. If you do that, you'll make a lot of money, and with that money, you'll be able to have the freedom to spend time with your family.
Mm-hmm. I love that. The longer I'm in business, the more I realize it's like you're divesting yourself of yourself and you're giving to others. And going back to what you said about just set your ego aside, right? There's no room for that, because that keeps you from making changes that you need to make. Your ego is like, I know my way around, and it's like, you don't actually. And you got to make a change, bud. So just kind of, emptying yourself and saying, all right, what is going on around me? Taking every piece of information and making informed decisions. That's key.
That's right.
That's key. Awesome, dude. This has been fun. This has
That's
been a
great.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, how would people
how
would people reach out to you if they wanted to like just get to know you or engage you for services? Like, I assume you have a website or something. Like, what?
We got everything.
Okay, cool.
So look for me directly. Just go to my LinkedIn page, right? It's Matt, M-A-T-T, Rosenthal, and just look up my name with Mindcore, or go to YouTube and just look up Matt Rosenthal, Mindcore. I have, a tremendous amount of content, and actually talking about all kinds of things like we just talked about. Both of those places, YouTube and LinkedIn, you can reach me. There's links there. There's ways to message me. My company page is mind-core.com. You have to put a hyphen there, mind-core.com. You learn all about our company. There's certainly about me. There's some really cool videos there with me and my staff talking about how we treat customers and treat each other. It's great. And I do have a podcast that's actually starting in a few weeks, and it's going to be called Digging In.
Yeah.
So, we just came up with that name this morning. I've been working on it for 2 months with my podcast producer. So there's going to be a whole lot of stuff coming out this year from me.
Nice. Well, from one podcast host to another, you're in for a wild ride. It's a very enriching experience, and
I hope so.
It will be. It will be. If I can give you that kind of advice, like what you gave entrepreneurs, it's like, do the thing. All the cool kids are podcasting. I might even have some tips for you. So, we'll have to say that for the conversation.
I love getting advice, man. You'll be another mentor. You'll be my podcast mentor.
Woohoo! I'll be like your podcast dad kind of thing. There we go. I love it. Well, excellent, sir. Well, I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to getting this message out online very soon. Be watching for an email. I'm very, very efficient at this. I'm going to see how fast I can get this done, and I think you'll be amazed at how quick. All right.
Cool. Michael, pleasure, man. Really a great conversation. I love it.
I agree, man. Well, take care and have a good rest of the day. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. You too.
Did you hear this episode and go, wow, I'm a founder and all my friends keep telling me I should get on a podcast? Would I be a fit? Yes, you would. Every single person who steps out of their comfort zone to build their dream has an amazing story to share, and this is the platform for you to do that. If you want to talk about your dream, what led you to start your endeavor, what successes you've had or challenges you've been pitted against, this is the podcast for you. So head on over to archdevops.com/podcast to find out how to get on. And also check out our free tip sheets on guesting or even hosting your own podcast. This is Fritz, your host, hoping to meet you on the other side of the hot mic at Arch DevOps.